Hello everyone, good evening. Greetings from the Institute of Global Professional IGP Bangladesh. Greetings from the Institute of Global Professional IGP Bangladesh. Thank you all for joining us and staying with us till the end. Honorable Knowledge Seeker, today I am your host for the evening. My name is Yernis Akhtar Choudhury and I am from Bangladesh. Dear Knowledge Seeker, I am proud to be associated with IGP as a global member. IGP, a non-profit organization, is a social and ISO certified international training institute. In 3 years, we already served 3 million knowledge seekers from 100 plus countries. IGP is internationally recognized and globally accredited. We are connected to more than 250 plus professions and 4,500 plus organizations. Institute of Global Professional (IGP) and ISO 9001, 2015 and 10002 and 2018 is the training faculty for skill development, which was founded in 2020 and is generating component candidates to meet demand in the global labor market by providing professional qualifications. The Institute of Global Professional is an educational institute that provides social work globally recognized and reputable. We serve student and community resource providing holistic social work and education. We believe that it is not effective to increase one's skill just by acquiring formal education. So we provide effective training and consultation to generate proficient generation all over the world. We distribute our services locally, nationally, and internationally to students, job seekers, job holders, and also for learners through respective campus location and distance learning platforms. We are an occupational and dependable institution. IGP is one of the famous online institutes from all over the world. Our vision is education is not a business product, it's a part of our human rights. Based on our vision, we are trying to reach all corners of the world for free webinars, seminars, courses, awards, quiz competition, mentoring, and counseling aids. On the other side, we also trying to serve more than 100 premium services for free like your own portfolio website, resume builder, cover letter, motivation letter, and wall knowledge platform for gathering general knowledge, which can upgrade all day. Kids learning games, website, free courses, converter sites, and many, many more. We help to empower youth to learn to meet their expectations and dreams and become highly skilled people. We implement several trainings, programs, webinars, and offline online courses for youth and learners by professional trainers, speakers, and coaches. Our sessions are conducted by globally renowned professionals to develop all kinds of youth and to promote the education of their abilities and personalities. To ensure excellent and in-depth instruction, we arrange with qualified trainers, speakers, and instructors. We extend free services to more than 3 million knowledge seekers in the last 3 years. We have affiliations with universities and organizations in 70 different countries. Virtual mock signing with many colleges and organizations have been accomplished. We are working to create a legendary generation of future scholars and citizens who will be accountable. We are constantly prepared to assist all knowledge seekers with valuable service. Spreading knowledge is crucial for the Institute of Global Professional. We believe that knowledge is love, light, and vision. So we try to understand the needs of today's generation and we serve them with good research and practice methods. We must have a genuine concern for the learners. We represent more diversity, growth, and innovation are required. To lead a session with professionalism, passion, and integrity, IGP members are committed to offering effective best quality service and continuous improvement so that individuals who seek information can improve their skill levels and value. Before we move to the next, let me remind you don't forget to share, tag, mention your friends in the comment box. Your support is very valuable to us. I repeat, before we move to the next, let me remind you don't forget to share, tag, and mention your friends in the comment box. Your support is very valuable to us. Thank you. Moving to the next, with your continuous support, you already completed 1,244 webinars successfully. Oh, moving to the next, with your continuous support, you already completed 1,244 webinars successfully. At present, now we are going to start our 1245 and our program name is Literacy Analyst. And today we have our speaker and our speaker name is Ma'am Romashan Buenventura Avin. Before I hand over the stage to our ma'am, I want to share a very little about our speaker. She is a assistant professor 1, University of Nueva Kansas Naga City, Cambridge. Now, very important moment for me to invite our speaker to IGP with her presentation. Now, very important moment for me to invite our speaker to IGP with her presentation. Hello, ma'am.
Hi, good evening from the Philippines.
Good evening, ma'am.
Hello.
Welcome, ma'am, in our session. So, ma'am,
Yes,
how are
thank you so
you?
much. I'm doing fine and really great. I am really grateful for IGP for inviting me here tonight.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you. Ma'am, please give some description about yourself. Then you can start your presentation.
Thank you so much. So, yes, thank you so much to the host for introducing me really for this evening events. It's evening here in the Philippines. So before I start my presentation, I just want to greet all the educators around the globe and those who are attending this online webinar. Yeah, this webinar for tonight's topic. So yes, I am Roma San Buenaventura Abin, and I am from the Philippines. And I am about to discuss or to present to you literary analysis as my topic for tonight's session. So, what to expect from my discussion? So, these are the things that we can expect. Number one, you will be able to take to be aware of literary analysis, but we know that there are really plenty of literary analysis that we can use. But my discussion will just be concentrating on these three literary analysis, such as the formalist approach or the formalist criticism, and we have the sociological approach and also the thematic approach. And also, I will give you example on how to apply the three approaches when it comes to literary criticism and literary analysis. So I'm about to start my presentation, and I hope that the internet will really cooperate in my discussion this evening. All right. So without any further ado, we will now start with my presentation. So we all know that literary criticism is really vital, especially in education. We have of course, we know a lot of literature teachers and English teachers, professors who are really handling the subject and who believe that these literary pieces that we have can really help our students, our learners to become a better individual in the future, a better citizen of our community. So that's why my topic is about literary criticism in a very positive context, and of course in to be to be really useful to all of us, especially we educators. So when we talk about literary criticism, it is or the study, or it is known to be the study, analysis, and evaluation of imaginative literature. So these are the things that we can really consider, or we can really remember about literary criticism. Another is that it is not reading between the lines, because sometimes we tend to tell our students that we really need to read between the lines, okay? But when it comes to literary criticism, it is not just reading between the lines, but rather it is the actual act of reading the lines very carefully. So when we do literary criticism, we are really expected now to really read the lines, okay? So read everything about it, and in a very careful manner, in a disciplined and informed manner as well. So we should really be acquainted of all when it comes to literary criticism. And another is that it is known to be the study, analysis, and evaluation of imaginative literature. So when it comes to literary criticism, of course, it requires in-depth analysis and appreciation as well. So we really need to be firm, and we really need to remind our students that when it comes to literary criticism, we are opening doors to appreciation. So students must really appreciate the literary piece, the literary pieces that they are about to study, and they must also be able to analyze it critically, of course, with the guidance of the educators, just like us. And we really need to teach them how to evaluate these literary pieces properly, and of course guided by us. So we really need to be the guide to our learners. And since we know that literature is in the creative side of English, or when we consider writing, it is in the creative form of writing. Of course, we really need to guide them properly on how to evaluate and how to interpret things. And we also have, okay, so let's now have the next slide. So this will be the course of my entire discussion for today's session. Allow me to just use the word today, because I don't know what time is it in other places right now. So this will be the main course of my presentation. So the main um, the main thing is about literary analysis, literary criticism, but since I'll just be concentrating on these three. So we will now have formalist criticism, sociological criticism, and thematic criticism. So how did I use these three literary approaches? Well, in my study, I use these three literary approaches to Philippine contemporary poems. So I looked into the literary or the contemporary poems that are available in my in our country or in my country, so in the Philippines. And in my study, I used 91 Philippine contemporary poems. Okay, and why did I do this particular study? It's because I wanted to get the educational values of these Philippine contemporary poems. So I was thinking before, like, what's the use of these literary pieces, these contemporary poems? So I tend to use it to look into its educational values to my students, since I am handling college students. And when it comes to educational values, I mainly focused on social, political, and spiritual aspect of these contemporary poems. So I really need to understand its values in these three aspects. So we now have the formalist criticism. So what is formalist criticism? We all know that the proponent of formalist criticism is none other than Aristotle. So he is the person responsible for the start of formalist criticism. And when we talk about formalist criticism, this kind of criticism um, seek to make literary criticism a scientific study, which insists that each literary work shows a function as a harmonious possessing a universal meaning. So that's the main concept of formalist criticism. It's not merely on getting the creative side of the writer, or of the text, but rather also you can somehow make it or attack it or approach it scientifically by looking at the function. So what's the function of this particular poem? And so on and so forth. And when it comes to formalist criticism, as of today or currently, we also called this as new criticism. So that's the new name for formalist criticism. And another, in formalist criticism, we need to remember or to take note that this analysis or this criticism deals with the form of the literature. So the main focus is the form, okay? And the words of the literature, so the form, the language, the words that are used by the poet in writing the poem, and of course the patterns in the literature. This is according to K. Smith in the year 2016. So he placed emphasis on these factors or on this criteria in attacking the literary piece in a formalist perspective. Another, according to K. Smith, okay, the formalist criticism stresses the close reading of the text and insists that all statements about the work be supported by references to the text. So we really need to read the text and then find meaning, but every meaning that we will be getting or we will be explaining or presenting, this must be supported as well by the text itself. So all the interpretation that we will have, all the imagery, symbols, tone that we can present must also be supported by the text itself. That's according to K. Smith. Another, according to the same author, the formalist critic, okay, so if you will be a formalist critic, you really need to embrace an objective theory of art and examines the plot. So if we are talking about a novel, a short story, you really need to examine its plot, the characters, and when we talk about characters, of course, the characterization of each character, because in literature, it doesn't mean that when you characterize a person or a character, you will just present the name and everything. So it requires in-depth characterization, so analysis of the character. And also, if you are using a formalist approach, you really need to look into the dialogue. So what kind of dialogues are presented by the writer or by the author, and of course the style to show these elements contribute to the theme or unity of the literary work. So in formalist approach or formalist analysis, you need to really get the function of all of this, unify the idea for you to be able to really present the the idea, the concept, the insight, about the literary piece. And another thing, when it comes to formalist criticism, these are the common questions that we can ask ourselves if we will be using formalist approach or formalist analysis. So first, how does the author create the tone and mood? So we need to ask this question. And then, what relationship is there between the tone and the mood? And of course, the effect of the story. So what's the effect now? By getting the tone and everything, those styles. Okay? And also, we also need to answer the question, is there a relationship between the beginning and the end of the story? So that's really important. So another, what tone and mood are created at various parts of the work? So if you are going to attack a particular piece, literary piece, in a formalist perspective, you should ask yourselves this question. And we will now proceed to my second approach. So this is sociological criticism. And when we talk about sociological criticism, this analysis or criticism focuses on the relationship between literature and society. So by reading the poem, you need now to connect it to the society, to its community, to the community of the writer, the time when it was written and everything. So just like that, connecting it. And you should always consider or remember as well that literature is always produced in a social context. So we all know, I think the viewers here are all educators, and we all know that these writers would always write something about the society, about about things, realities around them. Okay? And still under sociological criticism, writers may affirm or criticize the values of the society in which they live, but they write for an audience, and of course, that audience is the society itself. Okay, so those are the things that we need to consider in using sociological criticism. And also, the social function of literature is the domain of the sociological critic. So if you're going to use sociological criticism, you really need to dwell much more on the society. And there's an example here. If you know Charles Dickens, Charles Dickens is a well-known writer, and this person wrote short stories and novels that help reveal social problems in England. So if you will be using the sociological analysis or criticism by interpreting and analyzing the writings of Charles Dickens, you will be able to reflect, and you will be able to present the situations of England before. So it is really a must that when you hear the word sociological criticism, it is now the link between um, the literary piece and the society itself. So another, okay. So we have these things. Sociological criticism. We should also consider or remember that the sociological critic is interested not only in the stated themes of literature, but also in the latent themes. So, of course, we can get the main theme because when we are talking about theme, this is the central insight or the central idea of a particular literary piece. And once we get that, we also need to get the sub themes or the latent themes that are present in a particular text. Also, the sociological critic attempts to understand the writer's environment as an important element in the writer's work. So we also need to consider the environment, when the writer wrote that particular piece, what's the era, what's the period, and so on and so forth, in relation, of course, to the society itself. And also, the sociological critic usually has certain values by which he or she judges literary work. So it doesn't mean that you're free to judge everything. Of course, you need to consider the etiquette, the values, and because that's another topic when it comes to literary analysis. But we all know that in analyzing and interpreting a particular literary piece, we really need to be fair. Okay, we really need to to be very careful when it comes to the ethical standard. And next is this one. So, sociological criticism. According to Patron in the year 2015, he mentioned that sociology of literature is deemed as that class of interdisciplinary sciences in which it is dealt with contrastive analysis on community and literature with each other. So the sociological criticism, the statement of Patron is telling us that these literary pieces that are available are not written just for enjoyment, for fun, for pastime, or for hobby. But if you're going to look at and to read deeply these literary pieces, it will always give us an understanding that these are all connected to our community, to our society, to the reality around us. And of course, according to Menoy in the year 2015, sociological criticism investigates the way society affects the lives of the characters in the reading selection. And there is, of course, an understanding that the characters in literary pieces are fiction. So they are just product of someone's creative thoughts, imagination, creative mind. But if you're going to look at the story or the things that are happening inside these fictional characters, we will always understand that their situations are significant. Those situations are really existing in reality. The characters may not, but the situations are real. So this is what Meno is trying to tell us. And of course, this is connected to sociological criticism. Another, under sociological criticism, um, sociological criticism became a scientific method of interpreting literature, as mentioned a while ago, because we are now looking at the realities in our society, and of course by relating to the system of how it was presented, how it was written, and everything. And another, literature is the social institution and it uses the medium of language as social creation. So if there's language, if there's communication, of course, it will really involve the society itself. So it is considered as an institution. And when we talk about literature, it depicts life, and life is a social reality. So we all know that our life is indeed a social reality. So sociological analysis or criticism is really a must to use in interpreting a literary text. Then we have, may I proceed to my next slide? Okay, so what are the questions that we can ask ourselves if we are going to attack a particular literary piece using sociological criticism or sociological analysis? So first, we need to ask ourselves, okay, while we are reading, what is the relationship between the characters and their society? So this is one important thing to ask, and this is the question that we should answer by reading the literary pieces. Then, does the story or poem addresses societal issues? And of course, we are aware of different societal issues. So we have like poverty, crime, corruption, and everything. And of course, we need to answer the question, how do social forces shape the power relationships between groups or classes of people in the story? So we need also to determine the different social forces. So we really need to do research in the research about society, about things that are happening around us before we relate it to the text that we are reading. And we also need to do research about the writer's situation during the time when he has written that particular piece. Another question is that who has the power and who doesn't, and why? So we need now to determine who is powerful in the story and who are not. And we also need to reason out why. Why did we identify these characters or like that? I mean, as like that. And in my next slide, we will now have the third approach that I used in my study, which is the thematic criticism. Now, when we talk about thematic analysis or thematic criticism, thematic criticism usually centered to the theme or the central insight of the poem. And this is according to Solors in the year 2016. Um, he mentioned that by applying thematic analysis, your main concern is to get the theme, the main theme, the insight of the poem or the literary piece. And still, according to Solors, he emphasized the thought that thematic criticism is strongly linked to psychoanalytic and political interpretations of fantasy. So we now we are now um, we are also required to look into the psychoanalytic and of course the political views that are present in that literary piece. And of course, under thematic criticism, it is mentioned that thematic criticism of literature is organized around a topic or issue rather than the progression of time. So the main focus, of course, is the issue. What's the problem? What's the issue that is happening or is being mentioned in a particular literary piece? And of course, still about thematic criticism. Thematic criticism also um, deals with the understanding that the theme of a poem is its central or main idea. I use the word poem because my study concerns the poems of the the Philippines, particularly in the contemporary era. So I focused on the understanding that the theme of the poem is the central or main idea that is being expressed by the poet the time he wrote the poem. So still under thematic criticism, what's the important question that we should ask before analyzing a text in I mean using the thematic approach? So we need to ask ourselves what ideas or insights about life or human nature we have found in the literary text. So when we talk about thematic, it's merely focused on the main insight, the main idea that is really connected to our human nature and of course to life itself. Okay? So these are the things that we should remember when it comes to thematic criticism or thematic approach. So we will now have this one. So literature and analysis. So since we are dealing with literary analysis and the main concern are the literary pieces, so we will now try I mean I will present now a sample literary analysis. Okay, so a while ago, I mentioned that I conducted the study. I looked into the Philippine contemporary poems and its educational values, and the values that are prioritized pertain to the social, political, and spiritual values of these Philippine poems. And of course, I used the three literary analysis or criticism approach. And allow me to present to you the framework. This is the conceptual framework of my study. And also, this will summarize the things that I did in my study in relation to literary analysis. So, the title, of course, is Philippine Contemporary Poem and Their Educational Values. So, the first step that I did is to select the contemporary poems. I select all, and there are 91 available contemporary poems in the Philippines. And when after I selected the contemporary poems, I dissected, I read, I really interpret and analyze, and I tried to get or I get the imageries, the themes for me to present the educational values in terms of the social, political, and spiritual. And you might be asking, why did I get the imageries and the themes? Later, I will be discussing to you the reason behind the importance of imagery. Because first and foremost, I'm dealing with poetry. And the output of my study is a prototype lesson plan or learning plan. So this is prototype of lessons in Philippine poetry. So that's the output. Okay. So let me now present to you the importance of dissecting or getting the image or dissecting the poem and getting the imageries. Um, I tend to look at the imageries because I am dealing with poems, the poetry, and the imageries create similar snapshots that appeal to the sense of sight, sound, taste, touch, and smell in a reader's mind. So I really need to get the imagery. I really need to feel the image through my senses just for me to be able to get the things that I needed from these poems. And when I create these snapshots, this imaginary picture, I can now get the insight on how the world works or how a person views life among humanity. And the insight itself is now the theme or the themes of the poems that I picked. Okay? And the themes, of course, are related or talks about social, political, spiritual. And what are these themes? So let me now define it to you. In my study, I defined social values as focused on the every person's liability and responsibility to his or herself, to other people, and to the society. So that's how I define social in my study. So as you can see, it's merely focused on our responsibility to ourselves and of course to other people and to our community as well. Now, what is political value? In my study, I define political values as centered on the affirmation that a person can accomplish in the society. So I tend to look at the accomplishments of people in their society. And we also have spiritual values. When we talk about spiritual values in my study, um, it depicts the strong faith of Filipino to God, and of course, their religiosity was manifested. So I tend to look at how did this Philippine contemporary poems, because when we talk about contemporary poems, these poems are written like starting at around 1950s to 1990s, so 90s. So I tend to look at how Filipinos before paid tribute to their spiritual life or spiritual aspect. So we now have the imageries and themes of Philippine contemporary poems. A while ago, I mentioned that I used 91 poems, and these 91 poems came from all the regions of the Philippines. But since tonight or today, my discussion is merely focused on literary analysis. And of course, I need to give example. Allow me to just pick my example from Region 5, since I am from Region 5 in the Philippines. And Region 5 is known to be Bicol region. So this is what I chose to present for tonight's example. Okay? So um an information before I proceed to the next slide. You might be reading um, native language or series of native languages, but don't worry, I will translate it to you in the time of my presentation. So let's now start with my example. Okay, what you can see on your screen is the summary. Okay, so the center, that's the map of Region 5 of the Philippines. Okay, so wait. There are one, two, three, four, five, six. There are six Philippine contemporary poems that were written by Bicolano writers in this era. And the titles are the following. The first poem is titled as Mangangaran sa Gapo. So that is a Bicol language in our country. In English, it means names on stones. Okay? The names on stones, when I analyzed it using the three literary analysis approach, I found out that the imagery of this poem is giving of stone with an engraved name of the giver. So this is the imagery that I get when I read the poem. Um, so people are giving their stone with their names on it. Okay, and another is kamote. So the second one, if you're going to look at the presentation, that's kamote. That is sweet cassava. So that's, I mean, yeah. No. Sweet potato. Sorry, that's sweet potato. That's the English term for that. So that's kamote in Bicol region. And when I analyzed the poem, the imagery is that students planting sweet potato. Okay, so sweet potato is kamote. So this is the main imagery that is depicted from the poem. So students are planting sweet potato. These are elementary students. Okay? And we also have paalala. Paalala means reminder. Okay? So when I analyze the poem, the main imagery that I get from this is hunger of people. So this is the imagery that I get. And we also have the spouse, and the imagery of the poem is a weeping wife. Okay? We also have politica. Politica is the title of the poem, and it means politics in English. And the imagery of this poem is that a person discussing the country's welfare. And last but not the least, the poem is entitled Ako ay Magro-Rosaryo. It in English it means I'll pray the rosary. And the imagery present is asking for God's help. So those are the imageries that I was able to get from the six Bicolano poems. So these are considered as poems of Region 5 because the writers are from Region 5. So let me now present to you this one. So this is now the analysis. So this is how I crafted it. This is how I presented it in my study. So I mentioned the poem So I will just read everything because this is an example. So the poem Ako ay magro-rosaryo or I'll pray the rosary depicted an image of a woman asking for God's help. So she said, O Diyos Ama at mga santo, dinggin po ako. Diyos ko, maawa po kayo. In English, it is like a cry. Yeah, it is a cry of the woman saying, Oh God and saints, please hear me. Please have mercy on me. So that's the translation of this. And this is how I come up with the summary of the imageries presented a while ago. And now let's have the kamote or the sweet potato. The poem Kamote or Sweet Potato described an image of students planting sweet potato as the poem mentioned. So a while ago I mentioned that in formalist literary analysis or even to all forms of analysis when it comes to literary analysis, you really need to support your analysis with the lines coming from the poem itself or coming from the literary itself. And this is an example of that. So the poem Sweet Potato described an image of students planting sweet potato. As the poem mentioned, sige sana paawan ni ma'am, saka magparapatanong sa kamuti. Kaya uruol daw baga na kami naggigibo sa pansyong. So let me translate that in English. So according to this line, our teacher would always require us to plant sweet potato. In every day of our life in school, we always plant sweet potato. It seems like we are creating a grave. Okay, so that's the translation of this. So because of these lines present in the poem and using the formalist approach or the formalist criticism, I was able to get the imagery because the lines itself are really leading me to those imageries. So let's now have the next slide of my presentation. So the poem mga ngaran sa gapo or the names on the stone or the names engraved on stones show the image of giving of a stone with an engraved name of the giver as the poem revealed. So this is the line that supports my analysis. Tulong metrong hibo na lanob, itinaokan mga tawo, kada gapo igwa kan ngaran kang nagtao. So in English, it means that um, three 3 meters 3 meters wall was constructed by the use of these stones, and the giver of the stones engraved their name on it on each stone. So that's the translation. Another is the poem Reminder or Paalala. So from the poem Reminder, an image of hunger among us Bicolanos. So that's how we call ourselves because we are from Region 5. We are we are called Bicolanos. So an image of hunger among Bicolanos was presented as it is mentioned. Ni wag mong ungkatin ang demokrasya dahil sa kumukulong sikmura. Pagkain lang ang makapagpapaunawa. In English, don't talk about democracy because we are hungry. So it's only food that can make us understand things. So these are the lines that supported my analysis. Another is this one. An image of discussing the country's welfare as plaza nganing magdebate ang mga pula sa plaza was shown in the poem Politica or Politics. So in the poem Politics, I was able to get the image of people talking about or debating about about the welfare of the country because it mentioned that at park, so they'll go to park to have debate about politics, about these things. And the poem The Spouse showed an image of a weeping wife. As the poem presented, she finds no worlds beyond his arms embrace. So these are the lines that supported. So these are about imageries. And in the previous illustration, I presented to you the use of imageries. So the imageries are the tools that I used in getting the insight or the theme of the literary pieces. Now, I will be presenting to you also an example, a table, presented the list of the selected Philippine contemporary poems from the Region 5 with the name of the poet and the extracted predominant imageries and themes of each poem. So let's now have this one. So as you can see, I hope that it is really visible because the text is really not that big, but I'll just read it for you. So, selected poems from Region 5. So, we have the titles, for example, Politics. The writer is Merlinda C. Bobis, a well-known Bicolano writer, or Bicolana writer, discussing the country's welfare. That's the imagery. And the theme, politics, politicians. And also, another example, though the spouse, the name of the writer is Luis G. Dato, and the imagery is weeping wife, and the theme is domination of the husband over his wife. Then we have Sweet Potato. The author is Christian Cordero. Imagery, students planting sweet potato, and the theme, educate the children of the things they need to learn. So these are examples of how I identified the themes by just simply looking at the imagery or using the imagery. So this is also an example of how did I get the the values, the educational values, the social, the political, and everything. So let's just have an example. Okay. So in the poem, I'll Pray the Rosary, had its poem's imagery and interpretation through the use of formalist, sociological, and Marxist. Marxist is one analysis under sociological. So it talks about monetary involvement, economic, and everything. So the poem is a mere fact that Bicolanos would always have their religious affiliation. This poem is also a means of presenting unto the public the cries of poor Filipino family who suffered discrimination, cruelty, and rejection from their fellow Filipinos just because of their poverty, and the mere fact that what the persona in the poem could only do is to pray and ask God and even Mary, the mother of Christ, to listen to her cries and help her in her needs. So this is the situation that is presented. And the poem showed the cruelty around the poor family, that even the very least personality in the society who is expected to help her had rejected her needs to bless the dead body of her son. So these were known in these lines. I'll just translate it in English, okay? Because this is written in our language. I'll pray the rosary. I'll kneel down and pray the rosary. I'll recite the mysteries. I'll whisper all of the sentiments or secrets in the name of the Father and of the Son and the Holy Spirit. And bless bless the hungry politicians because they would also want to divide even my wait, even my poor house. Okay, so that's it. The selected, wait, let's have the next slide. Okay, sorry, so this is the slide for that, for the previous discussion that I have. So let's now have this one. The selected contemporary poems of Region 5 discussed how firm the Bicolanos are in keeping their faith in God through the poem Names on Stones, or Names Engraved on Stones. Bicolanos were also tired of politics. They are tired of listening to these politicians, for they believe that they are deaf and blind to the needs of the society. So here is now the integration or use of sociological approach. Then, in this poem, the society served as another contributor of sufferings upon the shoulder of this poor family. Yet it also showed one good characteristics of every Bicolano, that in the times of great sufferings, one can never forget to pray and trust that God will help them in any way. It is a poem with a theme regarding the Bicolano's strong faith in God in times of poverty. So from this analysis, using the three literary analysis that I presented, we can now get the culture and the means, the way of living of people from Region 5 during the contemporary period of the Philippines. And we can also get the situations that they are in way back before. So what kind of society do they have? And of course, in the next slide, these were all revealed in the poems Politics and Reminder. The Bicolanos have their great importance on education. So another thing that I get from my analysis is the understanding that Bicolanos pay high value to education. They want children to be taught, of the things they need to learn, and let go of this hypocrisy among these people behind the children's education. This was presented in the poem Sweet Potato. So just like the other region, it was also observed among Bicolanos the common scenario wherein the society is dominated by men, and this is what the poem The Spouse showed. So Bicolanos are also religious and prayerful, and that they have strong faith in God, especially when they are in great poverty. So those are the things that I get based on my analysis. So let's now have contemporary poems and their educational values. Now, those things are the main lead in identifying now the educational values. So these are examples. Let me just read it to you. So for social values, I'll just read three examples. One of the 91 poems that I've read and analyzed is is with the title Responsibility. Okay. The title is Frustrated Wish, and the specific social value is responsibility of the person to his or her loved ones. So that is visible. And the insights that I get from the poem, from the lines of the poem is that, so I swear and promise you that my life is just for you. Another, the title is Sampaguita Song. Sampaguita is our national flower. National flower of the Philippines. So the title of the poem is Sampaguita Song. The social value is that the role of every person to each other within the society. And how did I get this? Of course, by the use of the lines from the poem that says, "You thrust brown hands at me. Your thrust brown hands at me. Flower laden like old memories, tender at the recall of gardens in a province we left and miss." So it is like going back to your roots. So remembering your roots as a person. And of course, you will be able to be reminded of your role and your responsibility. Another social values is what we call cactus. So the title of the poem is Cactus, and the social values, the specific social values is living by adapting to the environment and becoming useful. And how did I get this? Of course, the line from the poem says that see how it bleeds to fossils the old sand. So we need to adapt, and sometimes, of course, adaptation would require sacrifices and everything, hardship and everything, just to fossil, um, where's that? Just to fossil the old sand. Okay, and we will now have the next slide, which is the political values. So we will now try to look at the political values present in some of the Philippine contemporary poems using, of course, the three literary analysis I presented a while ago. So for political values, one example is the poem entitled Hilaga. Hilaga means north. The specific political values presented is justice for the land. And how did I get this? Because of the lines from the poem that says, um, ang hustisya na tanging pag-asa ng mga duhagi. So the line is telling us about the justice that the land is aiming for, or the land is really trying to get. Another, um, manlilikha. Manlilikha means creator. The specific political values present in the poem is reform in the educational system of the Philippines. And why did I say this as the value? Because of the line from the poem that says, isinulat niya ang kwento sa papel na tubig. So in English, he wrote the story on a paper, and on a paper in o on a watery paper, or like that, in a paper, because this is figurative language in the Philippines. So it's like paper that is in water, so it's like that. So there there is an understanding that we need change. Okay, so another, we have the poverty of a woman who turned herself into stone. This is another poem. And the political values presented is that poverty and its effect to every person. And how did I come up with this value? Because of the lines that says, in stone, into stone, this struggle has turned me into stone. So there is really an intense suffering from the character of the poem. Then we now have the spiritual values. So one poem is entitled Overseas Filipino Worker. Well, Philippines is known to really have lots of this. And the spiritual values present is that guidance of God in life of Filipinos. And why did I say this? Because the lines of the poem tells us that my luminous plastic rosary pamphlet of Nuestra Senora of Guadalupe is entitled Overseas Filipino Worker. So this is a rosary and a pamphlet, a prayer, and of course, a novena, or a prayer to one saint, which is also known as the saint of travel. Okay. Another is the prayer of a student. That's the title of the poem. And the specific spiritual value is that asking for God's guidance in life, God's intervention in the life of a student. And why did I say this? Because the line in a poem tells us that, oh God, never to unlearn the child learned things. So we always, the students, the Filipino students in the contemporary period of the Philippines are really prayerful. And last but not the least that I'll get as an example from this table is the poem with the title To Give Flesh to One's Faith. And the specific spiritual values is a never-ending God's presence, practicing goodness in life. And why did I say this? Because there's a line in the poem that says, to give flesh to one's faith in a time and space. Okay? Just excuse me for a while. Okay? So that's it. So those are examples of the educational values present in my analysis of the poem. So let's now have the next slide. So as you can see, we now have like a summary. So we have Philippine contemporary poems and their educational values. So we have now the findings. And the findings, we have imageries and we have themes. So the major imageries present in the poem are poverty, and we have abuse on women, and we have discrimination of the LGBT community or among the LGBT community. Because I just get samples, but those are the relevant and significant images present as a summary, as findings of my study. And when in connection to the theme or themes, these are the main or the major themes present in the Philippine contemporary poems. Importance of education. So Filipinos during those contemporary era are really giving high importance to education and respect of women and the homosexual, and of course faith in God. So these are the major findings of my study. And to my conclusion, so I am basing my conclusion in my discussion about literary analysis, because the things that I presented are just examples of literary analysis. So allow me now to present my conclusion in relation to my main topic, which is literary analysis. So first conclusion is that literary analysis enables the learners to appreciate, analyze, and critically critique any form of literature, which will help them determine its reflected truths about life and people's reaction to life. So it is a must for us educators to really guide our students and to really be an advocate of making them understand, making them appreciate, analyze, and criticize in a very positive and constructive criticism behavior or approach all the literary pieces that are available in our own country, in our own culture, because this will really help them discover their roots, their identity, and will really guide them in achieving their goals as our future citizen. Okay. Another and last but not the least, this is my conclusion. Educators must use a valid prototype learning plan in teaching these literary pieces to improve the students' comprehension, analysis, and interpretation skills. So, because we are all educators, I think, of course, all of us, we have same passion, we have same goal, which is, of course, we are all advocate of educating the young minds, because we all believe that these young minds are our hopes. And with this, the literary analysis, the process of literary analysis will really make them holistically develop, will really trigger and make them use their hats or their higher order thinking skills. So it is a must. And for us educators to really guide them properly, to motivate them, we should also revisit our learning plan, our learning guides, and we should always align that to the current needs of our students, specifically in the form of analyzing and giving appreciation, expressing criticism on our literary pieces, because these literary pieces are part of our identity. Okay, so those are my conclusions about my presentation. So I am here in my last first slide of my presentation for today. So let me tell you this phrase or this sentence, Diyos mabalos, and it means thank you. So Diyos mabalos is my mother tongue or my native language here in the Philippines. So thank you so much for attending my presentation about literary analysis.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your rich content presentation, which can impact our knowledge seeker surely. After your presentation, I hope our knowledge seeker can learn something new, which was our only intention: learn and grow together, IGP knowledge seekers. Once again, thank you so much, ma'am, for your presentation. Now, ma'am, it's time for our question answer session, which is the one more valuable part of our regular webinars. Honorable sir, honorable ma'am, please stay with us. After a short video, we'll be back in our session part two, which is the question answer part. Okay, ma'am.
Thank you.
Dear IGP knowledge seekers, ask your question in the comment box as much as you want to know from our speaker. Thank you. After question answer, we have an webinar certification and online quiz competition. Stay with us after a short video. We'll be back. Once again, welcome back, everyone. It's time for our question answer session. Dear IGP knowledge seeker, please ask your question in the comment box as much as you want to know from our speaker. Thank you. After question answer, we have a webinar certification and online quiz competition. Let's welcome back our speaker. Once again, welcome back, ma'am.
Hi, ma'am. Thank you.
Ma'am, our first question from Nutrim Baraha. How does the conflict of the story develop or enhance the theme?
Okay. Thank you for this question. So, how does the conflict of the story develop or enhance the theme? In my presentation, I used my study using the poems or the poetry. But when it comes to the conflict, this is now referring to the short stories or the plot of a novel or a short story. conflict is really an important ingredient in identifying the theme, because once the conflict is presented, because we really need to understand and always remember that in literature we have four kinds of conflict. We have conflict, man versus man. So talking about man versus man, the main character and the antagonist and the protagonist, so they have conflict, and that conflict will always contribute to the theme. Will it be talking about greed, about seeking justice, or about um, or other things, about other reasons that might create conflict between the protagonist and the antagonist? So that is really a good contributory factor to the theme. Another kind of conflict is what we call man versus himself. So if that's the conflict presented in a literary piece, it will give us an understanding that the person or the character is having a quarrel or a conflict with his conscience because he did something wrong, something that is not aligned to his values. So that will also contribute to your theme. And we also have another kind of conflict, which is man versus the society. So it will give us another understanding of discrimination and other things, and that will always be part of your theme. And the last kind of conflict is what we call man versus the environment. So this pertains to the calamities and other natural forces that we are experiencing. So with this, we tend now to realize the value of loving our nature, our Mother Earth, and that always will contribute to our theme. So the conflicts in every literary pieces are really big help in identifying our theme. Thank you for that
Thank,
question again.
thank you, ma'am, for your answer. Then next question from again Nutrim Baraha. How does the work reflect the unconscious dimension of the writer's mind?
Okay. How does the work, wait lang, wait for a while. How does the work reflect the unconscious dimensions of the writer's mind? It is understood that every writer, when he will write a particular art piece or literary piece, there is a statement coming from K. Smith also that in literary piece, you really need to consider the latent themes. These latent themes are the outcome of the writer's unconscious but experienced situation. So it's the emotion because we are dealing with creativity. So when you are into it, when you are writing this, of course, all the unconscious emotions, things that are kept will always be part of the writing or the outcome.
Thank you, ma'am. Uh, Again, question from Nutrim Baraha. And the second question, it is about literacy criticism.
And the second question, it is about what's the meaning of this? Ah, okay. Really good.
Okay, thank you. Once again, thank you so much, Honorable Ma'am, for your time in IGP. We have learned a lot from you with new topics. It will add some value to our day-to-day activity along with new topics. It will add some value to our day-to-day activity along with our academic and professional growth. Honorable ma'am, hope to see you again with a new topic and a new date. Thank you, ma'am. Take care.
Thank you so much, IGP. Thank you. Thank you.
Honorable ma'am, before we move to the next process, if you want to leave this studio, you can, ma'am.
Again,
Uh,
pardon.
before you move to the next process, if you want to leave this studio, you can.
If you want to leave, so I'll leave. Thank you.
Okay,
Can
okay.
I leave now?
Yes,
Thank
ma'am, you can.
you.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much, ma'am. Dear participant, today some of our technical problem we cannot share our today's webinar code. We will provide you the code in a short time. Thank you. Dear IGP knowledge seekers, today some of our technical problem we cannot share our today's webinar code. We will provide the code in a short time. Thank you. Dear IGP knowledge seeker, today some of our technical problem we cannot share our today's webinar code. We will provide the code in a short time. Thank you. IGP knowledge seeker, it's time for our the most engaging part of this webinar, which is an online quiz competition, which is our regular webinar activity. Now time for the online quiz competition. To join the online quiz competition properly, please follow my instruction carefully. Now time for the online quiz competition. To join the online quiz competition properly, please follow my instruction carefully. First, you have to go www.slido.com, then find today's quiz or scan this QR code for direct join. Quiz code is event. Quiz code is event. After a short video, will start our quiz session. In the meantime, please everyone join in our quiz session. After a short video, we will be back. So please stay with us and enjoy our quiz session. Once again, welcome back everyone. It's time for our quiz session. To join our quiz session, first you have to go www.slido.com. Then you have to enter the code, and the code is even. And the code is even. We will pick your name from Slido, so join with your full name, which will directly print on certificates. And top 10 will be awarded with quiz completion certificates. And don't forget to mention your face to join our quiz session. Already 27 people join with us. We are still waiting for your joining, so please everyone join. To join our quiz session, first you have to go www.slider.com, then you have to enter the code, and the code is even. Now we are going to start our quiz session, so please everyone be ready. Our first question is, what is literacy analysis? Literary analysis. Option 1, it supports the interpretation with evidence from the play. Second option is, it does all these acts and more. And the correct answer is option 2, it does all these acts and more. And 60% people are right. Move to the next question. What is the purpose of a literary analysis? Option 1, to identify and define literary elements within a story. Second option, to identify and evaluate the purpose of writing process. And the correct answer is option 1. And 35% people are right. In the leaderboard, we can see the top one is Miguel Hertz. In second position, we have Joel Pias. In third position, we have Jordan Joy. Move to the next question. And our third question is, the two defining characteristics of a literacy analysis are: option 1, a thesis and textual evidence. Second option is textual evidence and evaluation of the work. The two defining characteristics of literacy analysis are, and the correct answer is option 1, a thesis and textual evidence, and 44% people are right. Move to the next question. What happens in a literary analysis? Option 1, you look at a small parts to see how they affect the whole. And second option is, you look at a small part to make a puzzle. And the correct answer is option 1, you look at a small parts to see how they affect the whole. And 89% people are right. Move to our fifth mark question, and the question is, the basic structure of a literacy analysis response is: option 1, contrast, contrast, compare. Second option is compare, compare, contrast. And the correct answer is option 1, contrast, contrast, compare, and 45% people are right. Move to the sixth mark question, and the question is, literary analysis in the Odyssey, the Lotus symbolizes: option 1, drugs and other distraction, and second option is living life on a deeper level. And the correct answer is option 1, and 37% people are right. Move to our seventh mark question, and the question is, literary analysis: do stories always have an antagonist, antagonist and protagonist? Option 1, yes, or option 2 is true. স্লাইডটা কি এরকম ডিস্টার্ব করে? And the correct answer is option 2, 7%. You are right. This is the next question. What should not be used in a literary analysis essay? Option 1, pronouns. Second option, transition words. What should not be used in a literary analysis essay? Is it option 1 or option 2? Now, and the correct answer is pronouns, and 56% people are right. On to our ninth mark question, and the question is, what type of essay is a literary analysis essay? Option 1, entertainment, informative, entertainment or informative. The correct answer is informative, and 69% people are right. Move to our next question. A, rhetorical analysis is the summary of a literacy work. Option 1 false. Second option is true. The correct answer is option for, 1 false, and 26% people are right. Congratulations, Charlene Saliojo. These are top one. In second position, we have Evelyn P. Wapri. In third position, we have Tashi Raktan. In fourth position, we have Jueles. In fifth position, we have Beniralda Yordan. Congratulations, our top 10 quiz competition winner. We have all of your name which you entered during joining. We will pick your name and prepare certificate and we post them on our Facebook official page. Congratulations to our webinar online quiz competition winner top 10. Congratulations again. Slide will take a few minutes for finalizing the result and after that we will issue our online quiz competition certificate on our Facebook official page and group. Our Facebook official and group name is Institution of Global Professionals. At the end moment of our session, we can say properly feed your skill. Never stop learning cause life never stop teaching us. Be happy and stay safe. See you again and again. We are your participation in every program. If you want to live a happy life, type the goal, not the people or things. Before I say or hit the end like button, again wants to thanks to all IG knowledge seekers for your active participation as always. See you in the next session. Till then, stay happy and blessed. Thank you, everyone.